Welcome to Marcos and James, the Lisbon Pirates podcast. Well, good morning, Tiago. How are you doing?
Good morning, Mark. I'm fine. And you?
I'm doing excellent, except we have been complaining a bit about the weather.
Yes, we are never happy about it.
That's right.
So now,
I think
it's spring.
yeah,
It's springtime.
It's springtime, but it's not springtime.
Yeah, cloudy.
Yeah.
And some rain also.
You know, I feel terrible when tourists come to Lisbon and they get this kind of weather because it's usually not like this.
Yeah, definitely not. But we are hoping that when the real summer comes, everything will be just fine and we'll be out eating sardines.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Sardines, they're almost here.
This June in Lisbon is the month where we have our how would you say, our festivals?
Yeah, festivals, parties, festivals.
Yeah.
And really one of the biggest ones is the Lisbon, what is it? The patron saint of Lisbon is Sant Antonio.
Yeah, Saint
Anthony.
Antonio.
And
Saint
right.
Antonio, Saint Antonio.
And so we celebrate by eating sardines.
Yeah, eating sardines and Lisbon gets the holiday is the June the 13th.
Right.
But yeah,
is the actual holiday the 13th?
Yeah,
because Americans get confused by this.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of activities from the 12th to the 13th.
Yeah,
but the actual holiday is the 13th.
The actual holiday is 13th. The big night is the 12th.
Right. Okay. And that's when they have all the parades. They have the what do you call marches? Yeah.
The popular march.
I guess parade.
Yeah.
I guess parade.
Yes.
Because they have each. How do you say freguesia in English?
Yeah, it's freguesia.
How do you say
neighborhood?
Neighborhood. Yeah, each neighborhood, each parish has its own float and dances and all kinds of stuff. So it's great.
And everyone goes to places like Castelo de São Jorge, St. George Castle,
right.
And
pays,
it's really
and
crazy.
pays way too much for a sardine.
Yeah,
right?
It's really crazy. But I would say that it will depend at the season of your life you're living, because I remember when our kids were babies, we wouldn't think about
going down,
going out. Right now, they are a little more grown up, and we began thinking about going to Real. Do you know that evangelicals, they wouldn't do something like this some decades ago?
Right, interesting.
Because everything was more religious linked in terms of tradition.
Sure.
I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing about our secularism.
Right.
But you get to a point that even religious festivities, they just lose their religious meaning, and so you can be a pastor and you go to to the Sant Antonio.
Nobody worries too much about it anymore.
You don't think way too much about that.
So, and this is kind of off topic, but it kind of fits in with what you were saying about how sometimes things changes.
Yeah.
So Hannah is upstairs right now with a women's group.
Yeah.
And they're talking about women in history.
Yeah.
So she's talking about Jonathan Edwards' wife.
Yeah.
Sarah Edwards, right? Yeah. And so one of the things that I didn't know that's fascinating about, and exactly about what you're talking about, is that Jonathan Edwards made a big change in his church. Instead of giving communion to everybody, he would only give communion to people who were part of the church. Yeah. This was a big scandal back then.
It was at that time that he was fired from the church? Because he was fired from the church.
And I'm not sure if it was for that reason, but a lot of those changes, because back in the day, that was looked on so differently. And so it's interesting to see how things change over time and practices develop. And
it's interesting because next Sunday we'll be celebrating our 89th anniversary. Anniversary, of our church. So 89 years from now, our church was born at this neighborhood we live, at Lapa, at Rua do Olival. It was a very humble congregation, a small and humble congregation, a different setting, so lots of poor people. And right now, 80
Isn't that ironic? Because then 89 years later, this is a very affluent, wealthy neighborhood almost.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing. We were talking a little bit about this past Sunday, because at the same time, right now we are about 100 members. Our congregation generally will get about 120, 130, sometimes 140 people in our congregation during the services. And God has been very good to us, because we've grown in these last 6 years. But the great majority of the people in our church, they don't live nearby.
Right.
And this is something I think we can say that it's a characteristic of the churches that are inside Lisbon, inside the city. Yeah. Because if you go to the suburbs, you have a suburban community.
Do you
Everyone
really?
lives kind of nearby.
And they attend closer to where they live. Interesting.
Yes. In Lisbon, it doesn't work.
I think this is all across the board when we talk about cities.
Yeah.
I think all the cities in Europe, North America, when we're talking about cities, this is what happens. Yeah. It's not necessarily, it used to be many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, I think it was more of a community church. And I don't know, urbanization, whatever it is, it's caused the church to spread out. Yeah. And because of that, people now don't drive to their closest church, but they drive to their, I don't know, what do you think? Somewhere where they feel the most affinity with, or what? Something they identify more with?
Yes. And you have a good side and a bad side out of that. In a way, like you were saying, you cannot go back, because this is something that changed globally in terms of the way that people live in the city. And you have your own car, your own vehicle, and you get just like maybe it's not a very fortunate illustration, but just like you get inside your vehicle and you want to go to your favorite restaurant, 20
and that's 20 minutes away,
you choose your church in terms of, not like you choose your restaurant, but in a way it's different. So we don't live anymore like only in a 5 kilometer
you went where you could walk. Exactly.
And one of the good sides is that for churches inside big cities, you have to go for the city in general and not for the neighborhood in particular. Right. At the same time, we would love here at Lapa to have more people from Lapa and have a more profound impact at our neighborhood. I was talking to a person this past Monday, and it was a lady. She lives nearby. We were at a meeting. I was invited to talk in a conference, and she was one of the people of the organization of the crew working. And she was asking me, "Where's your church?" And I was saying, "Is at Lapa?" And she was saying, "I live at Lapa."
Oh, interesting.
Lapa where?
Really?
And I was explaining to her where we were. And it's, in a way, of course, we would prefer that if someone lives at Lapa and they already knew that there's a Baptist church, there's a Protestant church, a Reformed church at Lapa, and they, I've heard about your church. Right. And it doesn't work like that. Right. So we are not happy about that. But we also know that when you're inside the city, you cannot just look at the
one neighborhood or one...
Because you are trying to serve the big city. Right. And that changes the way that people relate to each other, even inside the congregation.
Right. Yeah, and that's an interesting frustration that pops up, I think, not only with our church, but then just from missionaries as well, is to think that one of the hardest things to do is invite people, lost people who don't know anything about the gospel or don't have that value already in their life, to cross boundaries or to go across the city to a church. And so that's always a struggle that we face in inviting people to come to church or be a part of what we're doing, is that I think until people see the worth or see the value in going to a community of faith like that regularly, it's very difficult to bring people. So I invite tons of people and few people show up. or we have somehow, because of the relationship, been able to bring people to church, but it's very difficult to sustain that until they make some sort of decision which has value in what they want to do.
Yeah, because at the downside, I would say that if you're connecting to people and you want the people you're connecting with to be connected with the church, of course, that's always a work of the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely.
We are trying to be testimonies, to witness to people. When we want to make the connection between people that we are connected with and connected with the church, probably in a more urban context, it will be more difficult because people can use that as an excuse.
As an excuse.
Absolutely.
It's way on the other side of the city.
If it was near, I would go right now.
Right.
But at the same time, at the upside of the issue, I would say that in a way it's easier where you're in a more metropolitan context. It's easier for unknown people to go there. You don't have to have a personal relationship with anyone inside the church. You just go.
Just go and check it out.
Because you're in the city. In a way,
you're more anonymous in that sense.
Yeah. There's a chance to being anonymous will get easier for you to get inside church.
So I want to explore this because this is fascinating, because I think missionaries or people that come to Portugal just in general to work for the advancement of the gospel or with churches, they think the opposite. So they would think being anonymous would be bad. So they always want to be making connections. So you see Americans or foreigners, they're always trying to make these connections. But what you're saying is there is a good side of the anonymity or somebody being a little bit...
of course, because we know that the gospel brings people together.
Sure.
We are always hoping and finding natural to relationships to be nurtured because of the gospel.
Right, absolutely.
But probably sometimes that will be more of a consequence of the gospel than a cause.
A cause, exactly, right.
The proof is that you and me, we have tons of friends, unbeliever friends, that they really love us.
Absolutely.
And we really love them. Yeah. And they don't just simply...
they don't show up.
Yeah. Because we love Mark, we go to his church. Right. Because we love Tiago and Ruth, we go to their church.
There's not a cause and effect.
Of course not. Yeah. Because I want to be fair. We work on that, because the Bible tells us that the gospel is a word that gets body in the way that we live.
Right.
And of course, we try, by the way that we live, to incarnate
the gospel. Right.
So, but at the same time, I think it can be liberating to know that the Holy Spirit will definitely work through your relationships. But if it would just happen like that, it would make you even proud. It would be something that you would be proud of, because you'd think that, everything that's happening in my church, in a way, it's because we are doing the right thing.
Exactly.
And it's very humbling when you get people getting inside your church, not necessarily you're doing the right thing, but because God is calling them in strange ways that you are not perceiving, understanding, or even having an active participation in that.
So a good example of this is that, and you know this, we've been talking about this, in the last couple of weeks, I've been talking with some friends from our neighborhood, and even last night, talked to them again, had an opportunity to just continue to say we're praying for them in a difficult situation that they're in and invite them to church. But one of the things I walked away realizing was that I am utterly incapable of helping them in their life to deal with their problems and find solutions for them, because they're so complex. They're so difficult. They're so beyond my ability to even help. And in that helplessness that I have, I find a desperation for God to work and do what he does, and for the gospel to just grab a hold of them, to change their lives, to bring them to church, to be in community with other believers. And so that desperation is a good thing. And I'm so thankful for it in my life, because there's nothing I can say or do that would magically unlock that in their lives. And so we just come in desperation to God and say, God, you do that work, right?
Yeah, and I'm reading, I'm listening to, I was sharing this to you, one of the brothers of our church, David Leal, he sent to us, the pastors, an audio book he bought from Rosario Butterfield about hospitality. So I'm listening. It's a good experience reading by listening. But I'm at the chapter number 4, and I'm very encouraged by the way that hospitality is really something that we get from scriptures.
For sure.
From the Old Testament and from the New Testament, as a way of showing what you really believe about God.
Absolutely.
So sometimes we make a little thing of something. We make something that's bigger a little bit shorter in terms of sharing our witnessing.
Right.
Because of course, witnessing it takes the correct words and the correct and the right story. And we are all
always wanting that.
We hate the phrase share the gospel. And if you need use words, we hate that phrase because in a way we don't hate, but it can be very unhelpful.
Right. Yeah.
But
it's disingenuous, is what it is. Yeah.
But of course, at the same time, when we are so stressed about getting people, getting the gospel to people, we forget that one of the more convincing ways that the gospel works is just for you to you have that friends and just share the gospel with them. You live with them,
just loving them, serving them.
And you serve them. You try to be a good neighborhood, because it's really, and we have to be reminded, it's a spiritual work.
Absolutely,
it's a spiritual work. It's not a human work. It's a spiritual work that uses humans. Thank God for that. But we never know when things are working. And so in a way, of course, we have to press hard, saying be good neighbors, reach out to people that can sound dangerous to you, because the gospel calls us to do that. Not in a crazy way that you take unnecessary risks, but in a way you will always take some risks.
I had a neighbor not talk to me for a year because I talked to him about Jesus.
And so he just avoided it?
He said, I don't want you to talk to me about that anymore. And I said, okay, I mean, I want to respect you and I want to understand, but that's my life and that's who I am. And he kind of got a little angry with me. And then about a year later, he started talking to me again.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. It's patience, I guess. I don't know.
And you're right now. You're almost Portuguese in your bones, and that
I hope
with all the suspicion about religious talking. So but one of the good things is that at the same time, when you have a chance to be a part of a church, a metropolitan church, in the sense that you are in a whole neighborhood of the capital of the country. Being unknown is always it's also a kind of ministry. And how would I say this? Be respectful, because it will depend on the culture you're in. But be respectful to don't go so fast. Sometimes we have to try to restrain ourselves to don't go so fast trying to be friends with people. I know this can sound a little
that's hard
cold.
That's hard for like an American to hear. To go slower. And not so quick to try to make all those connections for the person.
There are people who right now belong to our church, and one of the good things for them to trust on this church was they are able to, of course they are not anonymous anymore, but they were able to get here and don't wanting to have conversations with anyone, even with us pastors.
To watch and observe.
Just to watch.
Listen.
And in a way, leave me alone, I'm doing my own thing. And it takes humility from Christians to understand that also.
Right. So what you're saying is that Portuguese people in general like to wade into the pool instead of jumping in.
Yeah. I don't know. What I would definitely say, I believe there's a little bit an exaggerated expectation from evangelical believers that people coming to church for the first time, they are really super needy of attention, and probably that tells more about our lack of confidence.
Right, exactly.
As Christians, as evangelical Christians, as a religious minority, that about really knowing non-believers.
Exactly.
Because at least probably talking more about our experience here at Lapa, in a way people they feel more comfortable when they have room to be here.
Right. Space
not
to
really knowing
think.
if they believe. It's the first time they are visiting the Protestant church, so everything looks weird. So if the pastor doesn't come to talk to me, for lots of people that will be an extra good thing.
Interesting.
Of course, we always try to talk to everyone.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's our job.
And to be hospitable and to be welcoming, kind.
But I would say that we are understanding that there's a good room to give people their own room and their own time.
Yeah. And in a sense, maybe that's saying that God is at the center of it all. Is to say, give people that time and that space to really interact with who God is and to hear and to listen and to process. And then as they do, that we're there to walk alongside with them in their journey of coming and understanding who Jesus is in their life. And I think that's the beautiful way of how the church continues to just reach out as people come. Not only here as we interact with the church, but as the church then goes too, because the church is spread all over the city during the week, and we get to do this in community with other people. Isn't that great?
And really, there are no easy solutions, because we are some of the this happens to us as a church. There are those who come and complain, I was there and no one. I felt the church, I felt a cold environment or very formal, or no one reached out for me. And then you'll listen someone saying, "Oh, it was great because no one."
Exactly.
I was there for months, and no one was going after me.
Right, and they felt that was good. Exactly.
And so, of course, like you were saying, and you've been really helpful. You and your family, coming from a different background, you have been really helpful, making us more. Pressing us more about being hospitable and having a culture, how would I say, rewiring us to people coming from the outside. I will give you
to be expectant
example. That changed a lot because of you. And because Tiago Oliveira, also my brother-in-law, who's right now is in United States. Remember, we were having this pastoral meeting, and both of you were going after that, saying that probably we should begin the services always introducing ourselves, which can be a very weird thing for a Portuguese setting, because when you go to church, you're not necessarily expecting familiarity.
Right.
You're expecting religion. And suddenly every Sunday, if you're the one leading the service, you'll say, I'm Mark, I'm one of the pastors. And sometimes that sounds like a TV show.
Yeah.
And for lots of people,
I never thought about
it's
that.
strange.
Yeah.
Am I getting inside a live TV show?
Right.
But so they are small things that they are not natural for us.
Right.
Definitely, they would not be natural for me. But right now, we understand that as a small thing. But that why do we do that? Because we really believe that God is
bringing people,
bringing people in, and so you have to.
I would say one of the interesting things as we've done this is that people that have come even for the first time, they know my name. And so I might not know their name, but at least they'll like as they leave, we always want to be out there just greeting people as they leave, and they'll say, "Oh, Pastor Mark, thank you very much." And it's funny because I say, "What's your name?" Because I have no idea, because it's the first time we've met. But isn't it interesting that we kind of trying to say, and I think there's a principle behind it. The idea is that as believers, we do want to put ourselves out first. We want to assume the burden to be welcoming and to assume the responsibility of what the gospel means for people as they come, instead of putting the pressure on people as they come. So I think that's fascinating.
In that sense, I would say, I'm going again to make these broad distinctions about cultures, but I would say that something more natural from a Protestant perspective.
Probably, yeah.
Because although we are in a culturally Catholic country, and we should respect that. But I understand why the more Protestant influenced societies they tend to be more horizontal.
Right.
Because if a revolutionary idea like the one that everyone should read the Bible, if that really made some difference, it will help societies to be not so
hierarchical.
It's difficult to pronounce, to say that, and that's why, in a way, I like to be. It's not about being Americanized, but it can sound Americanized to a Portuguese getting inside our church. But if it sounds Americanized, or if it looks Americanized, it's not because of the United States of America. It's really because the value of the gospel being at the center, and not an idea of the gospel giving you a very stratified church. Where the magisterium knows how to read and explains, and so everyone is going to sit on their own places, and so this is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, good. Well, I think we're out of time, but one thing I would like to mention this week, like we talked about, is we do have the 89th anniversary of our church on Sunday.
Yes.
So welcome. You're welcome to come and be a part of our celebration.
And we'll have a picnic.
A picnic after the service as well.
At Quinta das Conchas.
That's right.
You are invited. What do you need to do? You just come and
just show up.
Yeah, just show up. Exactly.
Yeah. Come to church. Show up. 11:30 is the service, and then immediately following the service, we'll go to the park and have a picnic. So, welcome to Lapa.
Yeah, welcome to Lapa.